My name is Galene Boyett, and I'm an ordained elder in the United Methodist Church. I don't say that because I'm here to speak to you on behalf of the United Methodist Church. I can't speak on their behalf, and I'm not planning on doing it. But I wanted you to know that I'm recording this as a person of the Christian faith with over 20 years of ministerial experience. I've been asked, along with many others, to make a statement against racism. Yes, I am against racism. I'm wondering what took us so long to want to make these statements. Anyway, so here I am making a statement against racism, which I don't feel is very helpful other than stating, okay, I'm against it. Well, what am I going to do about it? So here's a few things you need to know from my perspective. When I went to seminary, I was labeled a racist because of my white skin, and I was told I was oppressed because I am a woman. I hate labels, and I hate those two labels, and I don't claim either of them, in spite of all the people who have told me I need to. But that doesn't mean there isn't truth in those labels. I am a woman, and because of that, there are things I have to be aware of. You know, I've been taught since I was young about how to dress and how to act and when and where I should go out or not go out, who I should hang out with and not hang out with, things like that. That's called male privilege when you don't have to know those things. Well, okay, so I'm a woman and I have to know those things, but I am white, which means I have white privilege. And there are all sorts of things I don't have to know, and nobody has to teach me because I'm white. I mean, this is the problem. To my white brothers and sisters who don't know what white privilege is or don't believe it really exists. Oh, it exists. The problem is because it exists, you don't know that it exists. You don't know until you start talking to people of color who are trusting you with their stories. You don't know until you start doing research and reading books and news articles. You don't know until you start doing research. You know, I'm a member of the United Methodist Church. I didn't know that the formation of the United Methodist Church in 1968, get that year, 1968, saw the end of official sanctioned segregation in the Methodist denomination. When the Methodists joined with the Evangelical United Brethren Church, the members of the Evangelical United Brethren Church insisted that we not continue our segregation policies. I cannot believe I was born into a church that practiced segregation. And I can't believe I was raised in a church that never dealt with changing the culture. Yeah, we're still racist. Yeah, we're still suffering from the blindness of our white privilege. It made me angry that I didn't know that stuff, that nobody talked about it. It makes me angry when I, as a pastor, talk to an elderly member who's a person of color and they go, oh yeah, we met in the basement because we weren't allowed to use the sanctuary. You know, we don't know what we don't know, and that's what makes this so hard and makes this so scary. I was doing research because of the economic crisis that started with the housing crisis of 2008. I mean, 2007, 2008, that came and bit me and my husband when we were house shopping, you know, and the value of the house we bought dropped so low. So I'm doing research on this, and what do I find in the history of mortgages here in the United States? We had to pass laws in the 70s and 80s to allow people of color to get small business loans, to allow people of color to get mortgage loans. That's part of our mortgage history in this country. You know, and that's in the 70s and 80s this is going on. You know, that made me angry. What I didn't know. Wow, how ignorant have I been? And how much do I still not know? That's the problem. So please, if you are one of my white brothers and sisters and you don't think taking a stand against racism is important and you don't believe that white privilege is a real thing, come talk to me. Go talk to your friends and neighbors of color. Go read the history books. You'll find it in our immigration policies, in our financial policies, in our voting policies, and even within our church policies, as I discovered existed in my church policy. So don't just say you're taking a stand against racism. Find out some of the history of it. You're probably going to get angry too, because like me, you consider yourself a good person who cares about other people. So, second thing, not just white privilege, Black Lives Matter. Okay, the first time I heard Black Lives Matter, I had this moment that was like, well, duh, of course they matter. I didn't understand it would become a movement, that it was a movement. I didn't consider it any more than a slogan that just was so obvious as to be nonsensical. I've come to look at it from a pastoral sense. I have dealt with a lot of people who are grieving. I have been there as people are dying. And I know what it is to feel helpless. I feel helpless around this racism thing, as helpless as I feel at those bedsides and in those hospital rooms, as hopeless as I feel when I get a phone call after the person died in the accident. What can I do? All I can do is be present. It doesn't seem like nearly enough, and yet I've been told by so many it made such a difference. We who are white-skinned, we need to learn to be present, and we need to listen, because our African-American brothers and sisters, they are grieving, they are suffering, and you know, one of the stages of grief is anger, and they have suffered for so long and for so little reason that they are angry. And they have every right to be. And the thing about grief is you don't get to compare griefs, and you don't get to put down somebody else's grief. And you don't get to tell them your grief is better or worse than theirs. You don't respond to someone who said, my father died with, well, my mother died. You don't respond to somebody who said, I lost my niece with, I lost my child. You don't get to compare grief. Grief just is. It's a reality. It's how we feel. And it's something we have to work through. And you can't work through it if you are still in the middle of it, if the dying is still going on. So when people say Black Lives Matter, it's because people, by their actions, are telling them Black lives don't matter. It's not because white lives don't matter, Native lives don't matter, cancer victims' lives don't matter, blue line lives don't matter. No, it's that somebody is telling them, and unfortunately, way too many somebodies are telling them that Black lives don't matter. So they have to give voice to it in their grief and in their pain and in their anger. And we don't get to make comparisons, and we don't get to hold up the other types of grief out there. We need to learn to just shut our mouths or say simply, I am so sorry you have to put it that way. I am so sorry that you should even have to make that statement. I am so sorry that you are suffering. Be present. Stand with, listen to. And you know, in the church, we're really good at serving people food when somebody has died or people are grieving and suffering, somebody's sick. Well, the way we've been treating our African-American brothers and sisters, maybe it's time we give them a plate of food with a little bit of justice and a side of listening, maybe a touch of hope, a willingness to learn, and maybe with the comment, and if you need me to, I'll watch the dogs or feed the cat. Because that's what decent people do. They take care of each other in their grief. They don't condemn the grief. They don't argue about it. So I'm Galene Boyett, and I don't like racism. And I am a person of white privilege, but I'd be happy to talk to you about it. And I believe Black Lives Matter.